Hello friend, I am Rahat Hassan. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Before going to start this particular lecture on international political economy in the study of international relation, I once again would like to welcome all of you in this particular online course on international relations in a changing world. As I said, today I will be speaking on a very important topic in the discipline of international relations, that is international political economy. In the previous discussions, we have already discussed about the various issues, various theoretical understanding about the dynamics of international relations. One of the way to look at the discourse or the dynamics of international relation is the study of international relations from the perspective of political economy. So that we call as the concept or approach, that is international political economy. In this particular lecture, what we will do, we will first discuss the objective of this particular topic, why we study and what the things we will discuss in this particular lecture about international political economy. Then after we will discuss the basic things, the basic about the international political economy, what exactly international political economy rather is, and what we study and how we look at international relations from the perspective of international political economy. Then another important things that we will try to understand or try to explore probably, that the rise of international political economy in the discourse or in the discipline of international relations, how it emerged, why it emerged, and why we basically study international relations or the forces, dynamics of international relations with the help of political economic analysis. And then we will try to understand the traditional approach and also a modern, or we call as the new approach within the discipline or within the discourse of rather international political economy. So in international political economy, with the traditional approach or understanding of the traditional approach, we will try to discuss that by taking three important school or three important tradition in international relations, that is the liberal approach or liberalism or economic liberalism, one of the important components in traditional approach to international political economy. The second we will discuss, that is the mercantilist or mercantile approach as a traditional approach to understand the discourse of international relations, and last and third one is the Marxian approach to understand the dynamics of international relations from the perspective of traditional approach to international political economy. And in the another class, we will try to discuss the new approaches or the new things to look at within the category or within the discourse of international relations from the perspective of international political economy. And in that particular class, we also try to understand or we try to discuss the various another aspect of international political economy in the era of globalization. Then we will try to assess or analyze the topic, that is the concluding part of this particular topic on international political economy. So these are the major things that we are trying to understand, and with that help we will try to understand, we try to analyze the international political economy to understand the dynamics of international relations. So the first thing is, what is international political economy and why we study that, and the reasons or the genesis of the growth of the international political economy as a tradition or as an approach to look at international relations from that perspective of political economy. So, the terminology itself referring that the international political economy is basically the interplay or the relationship between the political forces, the political components or the political activities that is related with the economic aspect of the international relations. So, it is a kind of political economic relationship in the framework of international relations or in the framework of state system. So, the political economy, for example, that the economic aspect or the economic dimension of international relation. So, in international politics basically we study or we focus state as an actor, and it is the state relation, the state behaviors in the study of international relations that we include that. And more precisely up to the Second World War, end of the Second World War, the international relations or the area study of the international relations or the subject matter rather of the international relation was more predominantly dominated by the political aspect of international relations, that is the diplomatic relations, war, conflict and power orientation, more in terms of military power and political power. That was the dominating things that we study up to the Second World War or the end of the Second World War in the discourse of international relation. But that things after the end of the Second World War, it got changed because of the many factors that developed within the discourse of international relations, and then after we try to include the economic factors, the economic things that were also very important to understand the political dynamics of the international relations from the perspective of economic, how the economic activities, how the economic dimension of the international relations is actually impacting the political discourse of international relations or the security discourse of the international relations. So, when we talk about the realistic approach or either we talk about the liberal approach to international relations, that basically focusing about the nation state system and the state as a main actor and their political dimension, security dimension and the cooperative dimension in international relations or the conflicting dimension of international relations. That was the major thing that we discussed in the discourse of international relation. So, whether it is a conflicting, survival, self-help, anarchical situation or cooperative situation among the states in the nation state system, the creation of the international law to regulate the behavior of the state or the international organization, establishment of that to provide a platform for the corporations among the state to establish or to maintain international peace and security. There were the things that we discussed in the discourse of international relations. That was the important things in the international relations. So, the cooperation, conflict, power or cooperation, state system, anarchical or cooperative, mutual goal or conflicting goal, zero-sum game or positive win-win situation. So, these were the aspects which were more political in nature. But once you analyze that system, that domain of international relations from the perspective of politics, after Second World War, as we have discussed in the earlier statement of this particular class, that the economic dimension is now equally important, and after that Second World War, that realization was realized by the various political thinker or the experts on the international relations, and they try to include or they try to explore that dimension of the relations among the states in international domains as well. How that political factors impacting the economic forces within international system, or how that economic activities is actually influencing or impacting the political choices taken by the state or the state's people on behalf of the state. So, that become a very important perspective to look at the dynamics of international relations. So, as I said, international political economy approach is what it's a kind of trying to know the relation between the political forces, political institutions with the economic forces and economic institutions as well. What is the relationship, how the state are dependent to each other, and what are the conflicting or the cooperative kind of things between the state from the perspective of political and economic dimension of international relations. So, these are the major things, or these are the important things that we study in the subject matter of international political approach to understand international relations, or to look at the dynamics of international relations. So, before going to discuss the various traditions, various approaches, and what exactly we study in international political economy in the discourse of international relations, we have to know the various factors that contributed so far as the development of international political economic approach in international relations. So, in that we have to take into account first the economic crisis that prevailed or that impacted during the 1920s and 30s, in more particularly in the European context. So, as we all know about that, in the European context there was a kind of world war, First World War and Second World War during that period, and during that period, because of the rivalry among the major powers in the European context or in the European state system, because of that conflict among the state, and also which converted into a kind of First World War and Second World War. So in that particular period, more particularly in the First and Second World War, it also impacted the economy of the Europe as well. And because of that reason, the political thinkers and also the policy makers or the statecrafts, they also try to look at the economic dimension of the international relations or the relations of the states in the nation-state system. So that aspect of the economic crisis that we also call as the Great Depression in the economy of the Europe. So it impacted, and this is the first genesis to look at the political dimension of the nation-state system from the perspective of economy. And then more precisely, after the end of the Second World War, there are various economic factors that emerge in the discourse of or in the dynamics of international relations. So that economic aspect or the economic development which happened within the European context and outside the European context as well after the Second World War, that factors actually contributed to the development of the international political economy to understand and to look at the dynamics of international relations. So in that context, we can make out first the economy, the situation of the economy after the Second World War. We all know about that. After the Second World War, there was a kind of economic ruin or economic destructions of the European economy, and that impacted at a large context. So that crisis, that is the situation, economic situation of the Europe, was a kind of a crisis that was faced by the various countries of Europe as a kind of impact of the First and Second World War and the economic destructions, more particularly in the case of the European political system or the European nation-state system. So in order to avoid that kind of situation which prevailed in 20s and 30s, and also just after the Second World War, there was a kind of discussion or a kind of meetings in Bretton Woods in United States of America. The policy makers and the practitioners of international relations came together just to discuss about the economic situations that prevail in European countries and as well as in the world as a whole. And the policy maker in discussions, the major points to discuss to figure out or to count the things which is happening in the economic context in the Europe, they have certain points to discuss about that. The first point they were concerned about is to make a kind of stable international monetary system, where there must be a kind of stability in terms of monetary system, and also in terms of making certain rules about the trade and commerce among the state. And in addition to that, the another important things that they have discussed in that about to create a kind of stable exchange systems as well, which means that the exchange system, the monetary exchange system also should be very stable, and also there must be a kind of reserve exchange and also a kind of unit to exchange that also can be in terms of gold. So, the gold economy or the gold monetary system was the another important things that they have discussed, or they have the concern about that, and they discussed that in the Bretton Woods discussion about the status of the economy, and also to know about the functioning of the international monetary system or international exchange system. In addition to that, there were also concern about to create a kind of system, or rather we can say to create a kind of institution which is more monetary in nature, to regulate a kind of exchange or to regulate a kind of economy among the states in the nation state system that we call as the world economy. To regulate the world economy, there must be a kind of system, must be a kind of structure, and that structure to look at the functional dimension of the world economy, there must be a kind of international institutions which is more monetary in nature to regulate, to enhance, and also to control, rather regulate the world economy or the states relation in terms of economy in the nation state system. So, that to regulate the world economy, there must be institution, international institution for that matter. And also they discuss in the Bretton Woods, they discuss about the reconstruction of the European economy, which was impacted by badly impacted by the First World War and the Second World War, that is destruction of the economy of the European system or the European nation state system. So, these were the major concern they debated in Bretton Woods conference, and they come out with certain solution, and that we called as a kind of Bretton Woods institutions. So, the first thing that they agreed upon, that there must be a kind of international institution, and that institution was the creation of international monetary fund, that is we call as the IMF. The another institutions that they agreed to create, that IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which was later on converted into World Bank. The third institution that they agreed to create is the GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. So, these three importance is the outcome or is the result of that Bretton Woods discussion in United States of America. And in addition to that, they also agreed to have the open market system, open trade system or open market system, which means that the state must open their market for foreign investment, foreign trade and foreign commerce, like that kind of things. So, that open market system, the institutions for regulations or to regulate the world economy, and free flow of trade and commerce among the states in the nation state system. These were the outcome of the major outcomes rather of the Bretton Woods conference or Bretton Woods meetings or discussion in the United States of America. So, that creation of the Bretton Woods institution and the concern that was debated or that debated in the Bretton Woods conferences, that it became one of the important factors or the reason for the rise of the international political economic approach to understand the state's behavior in the state system or to look at the international system from the perspective of economy, because that become a very important reasons to look at this dimension or the economic dimension of international relations. Then after in 1946, the United States of America, which in the discussion that is in the Bretton Woods discussion, they agreed upon free trade. They created GATT for that matter to regulate or to discuss the various states about the free trade and free commerce. So, that institution was created, and to provide monetary fund to those small developing countries in terms of economy, to provide loans and assistance, financial assistance the institution which was created, we call this IBRD, International Development Bank for Reconstructions and Development, and to regulate or to establish the stable international monetary system, and also to regulate the balance of payment which was struggled by the various developing nations or the less developed nations, to help them. The institution created as a result of the Bretton Woods discussion that we called as the IMF. So these are the important things, but in 1946 the economy of the United States of America, that was not much stable, and it's impacted the promises which was promised during that discussion of the Bretton Woods conference in the United States of America, which means that there was a kind of assistance that should be provided to the smaller countries or the debt-ridden countries. The United States of America rather going through a kind of institutional mechanism to provide that or to regulate that, just for the contentment policy that was adopted by the United States of America in the context of Cold War, that is the rivalry or the ideological rivalry between US and USSR. The United States of America adopted a kind of policy that we call as the contentment policy of the United States of America, just to contain the sphere of influence of the former USSR in the European context or the European nation state system, and more probably and more precisely in the context of to contain the area of influence of the USSR in the western bloc of the Europe, which was more influenced and regulated or dominated by the United States of America. So in order to reconstruct the economy of the European system or the European economy, the United States of America favored a kind of direct engagement for the reconstruction of the economy of the European state, instead of going through the institution which was created or promised to create, that three important institutions that we call as the Bretton Woods institution. So in that context, in order to reconstruct the economy of the Europe and also to contain the area of influence of the USSR, United States of America directly engaged to reconstruct the economy of the Europe, and we have the example of Marshall Plan, and later on some some other plans also. So that important Marshall Plan, in that the United States of America directly engaged in providing or in helping economically assist the economy of the European states. In addition to that, there was also war that was fought between United States of America in Vietnam War, that the famous war. So in that case also, there was that impacted also the economy of the United States of America. So the monetary assistance given to the European countries, and also the Vietnam War during that period also, and then the revival of the economy or the revival of the various social, political and economy of the United States of America. The President of the United States of America, they adopted a policy to reconstruct the economy of the United States of America by providing or by constructing the various infrastructure development in the United States of America during that period, during the 60s period. So these three important things, that is the contentment policy, Marshall Plan, the economic assistance given to the states of the Europe for the economic reconstructions and to contain the influence of former USSR, and then the reconstructions policies adopted in the United States of America to create more infrastructure for the American people. So in that context, we see a kind of pressure on the economy of the United States of America, and because of that reason, the United States of America was not in a position to favor the various promises promised in the discussion of the Bretton Woods. As a result of that, we also see a kind of withdrawal to convert the dollar in terms of in terms of gold currency for the economic exchange and economic trade and commerce. So the fixed consumption of the dollar means the $1 is equal to 35 ounce of gold. So that was promised to create a kind of stable international monetary system. So that promised to convert the dollar economy into a kind of global kind of gold standard or the gold value. That promise was declined by United States of America. In addition to that, there are various other factors as well. For example, GATT was created as a kind of platform to negotiate the various states or the nation states to discuss on the matter of free trade and tariff, free commerce tariff, like that kind of thing, or also to reduce the import and export duties, like that sort of things, or to promote that sort of thing. GATT was created. The various nations in that particularly the developed nations, instead of using that GATT as a kind of platform to negotiate or to discuss among the various industrialized and non-industrialized countries so far as for the free trade and commerce, they also created G7 as a kind of group, G7 group, for the discussion about the free kind of trade and commerce among these states, and also free trade and commerce within the industrialized state. So they use that platform, that G7, as a more important compared to GATT. So that was again the kind of setback also. In addition, setback to the promise of the creation of the Bretton Woods system. In addition to that, because to help or to survive the economy of the United States of America, which was impacted by the assistance, monetary assistance given to European countries, and also the war between the United States of America. So in that context, and in addition to the creation of the economy or reconstructing the economy of the United States of America by providing more attention to the infrastructure building. So because of that reasons that United States faced during that period, that is the war America fought, and also the reconstruction of the economy of the United States of America and the engagement of the American government in the infrastructure building, for example, bridge, roads, and that kind of infrastructure building. So the United States promised that there will be a kind of replacement of the dollar in terms of gold values. So that promise was declined by the United States of America. In addition to that, the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States of America also imposed more 10% taxes or enhanced 10% taxes to the states that borrow money from the United States of America. Means the other smaller state, the developing or less developed states that borrow money from these institutions, IMF or World Bank, because that banks largely contributed by the United States of America. So the Federal Reserve Bank imposed or enhanced 10% more taxes on that. So that created a kind of crisis on the part of the smaller state so far as to repay the loan and the interest that borrowed from the World Bank, IMF, and also that was provided directly or indirectly by the United States of America. So that created a kind of crisis in the balance of payment on the part of the smaller countries, and that was also considered as a very alarming, and because of that reason IMF has to engage just to regulate the monetary situation of the these smaller states, so that state can rebuild their economy, prosperity of the citizen, and also in a way they would be in a position to return back the loans and the interest of these particular institutions, IMF, WTO, and United States of American banks as well. So that situation is again a very important economic dimension. What we try to understand in that, how that economic forces is basically influencing the political choices as well. So these are the major reasons, these are the major things we are discussing. In addition to that things, there was a kind of oil crisis in 1973 as well, and that created a kind of, in the European and also in other parts of the world as well, a kind of situation that we call as the stagflation, which means that more and more unemployment, less production, and also the price rise high. So that we call as the stagflation. We included inflation plus unemployment and less production. So that situation, these factors, the high taxation, the stagflation, oil crisis in 1973, that created another kind of economic crisis or economic problem in the political discourse or in the arena of international relations. Another important things again that contributed for the rise of the political aspect to discuss the economic aspect or the economic relation or the economic impact on politics is the policy of new protectionism. In order to control the free flow of income and also to regain or to reconstruct the economy of the United States of America, the United States of America adopted the policy that we call as the new protectionist policy. In that, the United States of America imposed more taxes on the import duty, that the goods which are coming from other side of the world or the other economy to the United States of America, the United States of America enhance or impose more taxes on the import duties. So that created a kind of another kind of situation, crisis situation, and it is against the promise which is done in the Bretton Woods discussion, that there will be a GATT, there will be a free flow of commerce and trade, and that there will be a free trade and economic exchange between the state. So because of that, the new protectionist policies that was against the ethics and the promises that was done during that discussion that we call as the Bretton Woods discussion or Bretton Woods institutions. At the same time, there was a rise of various other smaller economic powers as well, more particularly on the part of Asia. For example, Japan, for example, Korea, for example, Taiwan. So these are they were called as the Asian tigers. Their economy emerged and they just challenged the economy of the European industrialized nations, more particularly the United States of America. So that protectionist policy and the rise of these smaller powers in terms of economic power, they started questioning the exchange system and the dominancy of the Western power to control the world economy, to regulate the world economy, and also these world institutions IMF, WTO and GATT. And they also consider that GATT as a platform for free trade and commerce, open trade and commerce, to discuss the issues related to that by the various states in the nation state system. But they consider these institutions the mechanism to resolve the international monetary system and also to resolve the monetary economic exchange system or international exchange system, economic exchange system. They consider that system, that structure, their functioning as a kind of inequality or discriminatory in nature, and it favor more to the United States of America and more industrialized nations. So they come up with a new conception or that we call as the North-South dialogue, or more precisely we called it as a new international economic order, where they demand these smaller countries or the developing nations that emerge as a big economic power in Asia and also contributing a lot in the world economic system. They demanding that we also call as the concept of global south. They demanding more equality in terms of in the arena of international economic system or in the world economic system. So in that they demand more a kind of equality, more participation, more voices in the functioning of these particular institutions. And they adopted United Nations General Assembly to discuss that sort of things, that is the equality based world economic systems, where the aspirations, the concerns of the developing nations that also be sorted out and that also be discussed in a more transparent manner, so that their voice can be considered and their voice also taken into account so far as the functioning of this institution is concerned and also the functioning of the world economy is concerned. So that new economic debate is another important things about the relations between the developed and developing nations, industrialized and less industrialized nations, more in terms of economic factors rather in terms of political factors. In addition to that new economic order, the another important things that which happened in the world economy is that the West Asian nations, that is the oil rich nations, were also, because of many factors, able to enhance the rise of the oil prices as well. So that also given a kind of strength to that less industrialized nations, that their concern or their voices also, they also in a position to raise their voice and to also achieve their objectives as well. So in that sense, because of that reason, in order to avoid that situation that which emerged because of the new economic order, another important things that emerged during that period after 1980s onwards, there was another explanation or to look at the dynamics of world economy that we call as the new liberal economic system, or the new liberalism as an approach to look at the dynamics or the functioning of the international system in terms of economy. So they agreed upon to create a kind of various structure that we called as the structural, that we also called as Washington consciousness, that the United States of America and other industrialized nations agreed upon to create the various structure, institution that will control the world economy. So the world economy would be controlled by the specialized agencies, specialized structure to look at the functioning of the economy. So in that context, there are various institutions, new kind of role which was provided to IMF, World Bank, WTO. So these world new liberal things that also emerge in the discourse of international relations as well. So that we call as the new liberal, and also we call it the Washington consciousness. After that, in the era of globalization, end of the Cold War period, these are the things which develops during that period of Cold War. It started from 1945 up to 90s. After that, we see a kind of major change in the world politics that we call as the end of the Cold War period, or the starting phase of the process of globalization. So in the process of globalization, the economy more interacted, more open economy, and also there was a more interaction and interdependency between the state in terms of economy, free flow of income, free flow of the migrations of the people. In that context also, the new sort of things or the new things which also emerge in the discourse of international relations in terms of economic globalization. So more structure, more open market system, more interdependency, and more economic factors in a way impacting the political choices or the state behaviors or the foreign policy making of the every state in the nation state system. So in that context, we see, in summary, you can say that there are various factors which emerge after, more precisely after 1945, after the end of the Second World War, and to regulating and to controlling the world economy, the industrialized nations agreed upon to create various institutions, specialized institutions to regulate, to provide, to regulate the world economy, and also to provide loan and assistance to the developing nations. And in addition to that, we also see there are various interdependency and the various layers of the relationship between the political dynamics and the economic forces. And these are the major concern or major factors, rather we can say, that contributed for the development of a particular kind of way to look at international relations from the perspective of political economic relationship, and we call that sort of relationship political and economic forces relationship in the era of international relations. We call that international political economy approach to look at the dynamics of international relations. So with that, I hope we have discussed the one important aspect in a detail, that what exactly international political economy approach is and what are the various factors that contributed for the rise of the important tradition or important way to look at international relations is the international political economic approach to look at. So with that, we stop here this particular lecture, and in that we discuss the basic things about the international political economic approach. In the second lecture, we will try to discuss the traditions of the international political economic approach, traditional approach and the modern approach. So in the next class, we will start our discussion with another important approach that we call as the traditional approach to international political economy. First, in that we will discuss liberal approach, mercantilist approach, and then the Marxian approach. So we will back in the next class to discuss the traditional approach to international economy. Thank you very much.